Generation Z, term used to describe Americans born during the late 1990s and early 2000s. Some sources give the specific year range of 1997 to 2012, although the years spanned are sometimes contested or debated because generations and their zeitgeists are difficult to delineate. Generation Z follows the millennial generation, sometimes called Generation Y, which followed Generation X, the first generation to be assigned a letter. Reaching the end of the standard Latin alphabet, Generation Z is succeeded by Generation Alpha, the first generation to be assigned a Greek letter. Members of Generation Z, or Gen Zers, have been undeniably shaped by the Great Recession of 2007-09 and the COVID-19 pandemic. They grew up in the era of the iPhone, which debuted in 2007, and of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, a governmental department founded in 2002 after the September 11 attacks that most of them are too young to remember. Because of this, early names for Gen Z included I-Generation and Homelanders. In their early years they witnessed watershed social changes, such as the election of the first black U.S. president, Barack Obama, and the legalization of same-sex marriage. Generation Z is, in general, the most diverse generation of Americans to date in a variety of demographics. Nearly 50% of Gen Zers are racial and ethnic minorities, and 1 in 4 identifies as Hispanic. Gen Zers are more likely than previous generations to have at least one foreign-born parent, although immigrants make up a smaller proportion of Generation Z than of Millennials. Gen Zers have grown up in more diverse settings than did previous generations and have higher percentages of single-parent families, mixed-race families, and LGBTQ+ parents in legally recognized partnerships. In fact, 16% of Gen Zers identify as part of the LGBTQ+ community themselves, more than any previous generation. They are also shifting and eschewing gender norms more than any previous generation, with more than half of Gen Zers saying that forms and profiles should allow for sex or gender options other than man and woman. They are more likely to reside in cities and metropolitan areas, only 13% growing up in rural areas, and Gen Zers are less likely to move than those of previous generations were at the same age. Research in 2018 showed that the oldest members of Gen Z were delaying or perhaps even foregoing marriage, only 4% getting married between the ages of 18 and 21, nearly half as many as in the millennial generation, of which 7% got married at a young age. This may be partly because more of them are going to college. Gen Z is the first true digital native generation. As opposed to Millennials, the generation that lived through the rise of the internet while still growing up with cable television and landline phones, Gen Zers have lived their lives fully connected digitally. Most of them do not remember life before smartphones, and all have grown up during a time of ubiquitous access to streaming content and social media. The way they interact with the internet and with each other via the internet is different from the ways of previous generations. Whereas Millennials went through an era of very open and personal posting on social media, deeply personal and public posts on Facebook, Twitter, or blogs, Gen Zers have turned more toward anonymous forms of social media, such as Snapchat and Whisper, which allow users to keep their audience limited and have messages disappear after the recipient views them. Some reports have noted members of Generation Z as more pragmatic and earlier to mature than those of previous generations, Gen Zers being more likely to graduate high school, more likely to go to college, and more cautious in their career choices. They are more likely than any previous generation to have at least one parent who graduated college. They were found less likely to engage in underage drinking or to ride in cars without wearing a seat belt. This may be partly because of their being mostly raised by Generation X parents, who were largely concerned with childhood safety. Another contributing factor could be that Gen Zers were growing up during the recession of 2007-09, during which they witnessed adults around them experiencing financial trouble and employment instability. As they began moving into adulthood, Gen Zers aimed to avoid the difficulties that plagued the generations, including the baby boom, before them. Use of information and communications technologies, ICT. Generation Z is one of the first cohorts to have internet technology readily available at a young age. With the Web 2.0 revolution that occurred throughout the mid-late 2000s and 2010s, they have been exposed to an unprecedented amount of technology in their upbringing, with the use of mobile devices growing exponentially over time. Anthony Turner characterizes Generation Z as having a digital bond to the internet, and argues that it may help youth to escape from emotional and mental struggles they face offline. According to U.S. consultants Sparks and Honey in 2014, 41% of Generation Z spend more than 3 hours per day using computers for purposes other than schoolwork, compared with 22% in 2004. In 2015, an estimated 150,000 apps, 10% of apps in Apple's App Store, were educational and aimed at children up to college level, though opinions are mixed as to whether the net result will be deeper involvement in learning and more individualized instruction, or impairment through greater technology dependence and a lack of self-regulation that may hinder child development. Parents who raise Gen Z children fear the overuse of the internet, and dislike the ease of access to inappropriate information and images, as well as social networking sites where minors can gain access to people worldwide. Gen Z children, inversely, feel annoyed with their parents and complain about parents being overly controlling when it comes to their internet usage. A 2015 study by Microsoft found that 77% of respondents aged 18 to 24 said yes to the statement, "When nothing is occupying my attention, the first thing I do is reach for my phone," compared to just 10% for those aged 65 and over. In a TEDx Houston talk, Jason Dorsey of the Center for Generational Kinetics stressed the notable differences in the way that Millennials and Generation Z consume technology, with 18% of Generation Z feeling that it is okay for a 13-year-old to have a smartphone, compared with just 4% for the previous generation. An online newspaper about texting, SMS and MMS writes that teens own cell phones without necessarily needing them, that receiving a phone is considered a rite of passage in some countries, allowing the owner to be further connected with their peers, and it is now a social norm to have one at an early age. An article from the Pew Research Center stated that nearly 3/4 of teens have or have access to a smartphone and 30% have a basic phone, while just 12% of teens 13 to 15 say they have no cell phone of any type. These numbers are only on the rise, and the fact that the majority own a cell phone has become one of this generation's defining characteristics. Consequently, 24% of teens go online almost constantly. A survey of students from 79 countries by the OECD found that the amount of time spent using an electronic device has increased, from under 2 hours per weekday in 2012 to close to 3 in 2019, at the expense of extracurricular reading. Psychologists have observed that sexting, the transmission of sexually explicit content via electronic devices, has seen noticeable growth among contemporary adolescents. Older teenagers are more likely to participate in sexting. Besides some cultural and social factors such as the desire for acceptance and popularity among peers, the falling age at which a child receives a smartphone may contribute to the growth in this activity. However, while it is clear that sexting has an emotional impact on adolescents, it is still not clear how it precisely affects them. Some consider it a high-risk behavior because of the ease of dissemination to third parties, leading to reputational damage and the link to various psychological conditions including depression and even suicidal ideation. Others defend youth's freedom of expression over the internet. There is some evidence that at least in the short run, sexting brings positive feelings of liveliness or satisfaction. However, girls are more likely than boys to be receiving insults, social rejections, or reputational damage as a result of sexting. Despite being labeled as digital natives, the 2018 International Computer and Information Literacy Study, ICILS, conducted on 42,000 eighth graders, or equivalents, from 14 countries and education systems, found that only 2% of these people were sufficiently proficient with information devices to justify that description, and only 19% could work independently with computers to gather information and to manage their work. ICILS assesses students on two main categories, computer and information literacy, CIL, and computational thinking, CT. For CIL, there are 4 levels, 1 to 4, with level 4 being the highest. Although at least 80% of students from most countries tested reached level 1, only 2% on average reached level 4. Countries or education systems whose students scored near or above the international average of 496 in CIL were, in increasing order, France, North Rhine-Westphalia, Portugal, Germany, the United States, Finland, South Korea, Moscow, and Denmark. CT is divided into 4 levels, the upper, middle, and lower regions. International averages for the proportions of students reaching each of these were 18%, 50%, and 32%, respectively. Countries or education systems whose students scored near or above the international average of 500 were, in increasing order, the United States, France, Finland, Denmark, and South Korea. In general, female 8th graders outperformed their male counterparts in CIL by an international average of 18 points but were narrowly outclassed by their male counterparts in CT. Narrow gaps made estimates of averages have higher coefficients of variation. In the United States, where the computer-based tests were administered by the National Center for Education Statistics, 72% of 8th graders said they searched for information on the internet at least once a week or every school day, and 65% reported they were autodidactic information finders on the internet. By the early 2020s, many members of Generation Z enter the workforce without some basic IT skills, though they can learn more quickly than older workers. Pornography viewing. While pornography is made for entertainment, teenagers are increasingly turning to it as a source of information on sexuality, especially what to do during a sexual encounter, as teachers tend to focus on contraception. In fact, pornography is reaching an increasingly large youth audience as young as people in their early teenage years, not only on social networks, but also on dedicated websites, thanks both to their access to electronic devices and the influence of their friends. Although parents generally believe adolescents who view pornography for pleasure tend to be boys, surveys and interviews reveal that this behavior is also common among girls. A 2020 report by the British Board of Film Classification, BBFC, available only by request due to the presence of graphic material suggests that parents either are in denial or are completely oblivious to the prevalence of pornography viewership by adolescents, with 3/4 telling researchers that they did not believe their children consumed such material. Over half of the teenagers interviewed told researchers they had viewed pornography, though the actual number is likely higher due to the sensitivity of this topic. Many interviewees told researchers they felt anxious about their body image and the expectations of their potential sexual partners as a result of viewing, and their concerns over sexual violence. About 1/3 of the British population watches these films, according to industry estimates. Use of social media networks. The use of social media has become integrated into the daily lives of most Gen Z consumers with access to mobile technology, who use it primarily to keep in contact with friends and family. As a result, mobile technology has caused online relationship development to become a new generational norm. Gen Z uses social media and other sites to strengthen bonds with friends and to develop new ones. They interact with people who they otherwise would not have met in the real world, becoming a tool for identity creation. The negative side to mobile devices for Generation Z, according to Tweng, lies in their being less face-to-face, and thereby causing their users to feel more lonely and left out. Speed and reliability are important factors in members of Generation Z's choice of social networking platform. This need for quick communication is presented in popular Generation Z apps like Vine and the prevalent use of emojis. In addition to connecting to other people, they use social media to keep themselves up to date with the news, unlike older generations, whom prefer newspapers and television. Nevertheless, even though people aged 18 to 24 are heavily reliant upon social media networks, they have very little trust in them. Focus group testing found that while teens may be annoyed by many aspects of Facebook, They continue to use it because participation is important in terms of socializing with friends and peers. Twitter and Instagram are seen to be gaining popularity among members of Generation Z, with 24%, and growing, of teens with access to the internet having Twitter accounts. This is, in part, due to parents not typically using these social networking sites. Reddit has gained immense popularity among Gen Z. Gen Z makes up 26% of all Reddit users and generate over 8 billion monthly views for the platform, a share which continues to grow. 51% of Gen Z respondents said that they were attracted to the user-driven nature of Reddit more than Twitter, Facebook or Snapchat. 87% of Gen Z respondents state that there is a community for everyone on Reddit. Snapchat is also seen to have gained attraction in Generation Z because videos, pictures, and messages send much faster on it than in regular messaging. TikTok has gained increasing popularity among Gen Z users, surpassing Instagram in 2021. As of 2022, TikTok has around 689 million active users, 43% of whom are from Gen Z. Based on current growth figures, it is predicted that by the end of 2023, TikTok audience will grow by 1.5 billion active users, 70% of whom will be from Generation Z. As of 2023, so popular is TikTok among people under the age of 30 in Europe and North America that they typically ignore their own government's concerns over issues of user privacy and national security. A study by Gabrielle Bourca, et al. Found that teenagers in 2012 were more likely to share different types of information than teenagers in 2006. However, they will take steps to protect information that they do not want being shared, and are more likely to follow others on social media than share. A survey of U.S. teenagers from advertising agency J. Walter Thompson likewise found that the majority of teenagers are concerned about how their posting will be perceived by people or their friends. 72% of respondents said they were using social media on a daily basis, and 82% said they thought carefully about what they post on social media. Moreover, 43% said they had regrets about previous posts. A 2019 ChildWise survey of 2,000 British children aged 5 to 16 found that the popularity of Facebook halved compared to the previous year. Children of the older age group, 15 to 16, reported signs of online fatigue, with about 3 of 10 saying they wanted to spend less time on the internet. Surveys show that 90% of teens 13 to 17 have used social media, 75% have at least one social media account, 51% say they go on at least one social media daily, 66% have their own devices with internet, and teens are online for almost 9 hours a day. Effects of screen time. In his 2017 book Irresistible, Professor of Marketing Adam Alter explained that not only are children addicted to electronic gadgets, but their addiction jeopardizes their ability to read nonverbal social cues. A 2019 meta-analysis of thousands of studies from almost 24 countries suggests that while as a whole, there is no association between screen time and academic performance, when the relation between individual screen time activity and academic performance is examined, negative associations are found. Watching television is negatively correlated with overall school grades, language fluency, and mathematical ability, while playing video games was negatively associated with overall school grades only. According to previous research, screen activities not only take away the time that could be spent on homework, physical activities, verbal communication, and sleep, the time displacement hypothesis, but also diminish mental activities, the passivity hypothesis. Furthermore, excessive television viewing is known for harming the ability to pay attention as well as other cognitive functions. It also causes behavioral disorders, such as having unhealthy diets, which could damage academic performance. Excessively playing video games, on the other hand, is known for impairing social skills and mental health, and as such could also damage academic performance. However, depending on the nature of the game, playing it could be beneficial for the child. For instance, the child could be motivated to learn the language of the game in order to play it better. Among adolescents, excessive internet surfing is well known for being negatively associated with school grades, though previous research does not distinguish between the various devices used. Nevertheless, one study indicates that internet access, if used for schoolwork, is positively associated with school grades, but if used for leisure, is negatively associated with it. Overall, the effects of screen time are stronger among adolescents than children. Research conducted in 2017 reports that the social media usage patterns of this generation may be associated with loneliness, anxiety, and fragility, and that girls may be more affected than boys by social media. According to 2018 CDC reports, girls are disproportionately affected by the negative aspects of social media than boys. Researchers at the University of Essex analyzed data from 10,000 families, from 2010 to 2015, assessing their mental health utilizing two perspectives, happiness and well-being, throughout social, familial, and educational perspectives. Within each family, they examined children who had grown from 10 to 15 during these years. At age 10, 10% of female subjects reported social media use, while this was only true for 7% of the male subjects. By age 15, this variation jumped to 53% for girls, and 41% for boys. This percentage influx may explain why more girls reported experiencing cyberbullying, decreased self-esteem, and emotional instability more than their male counterparts. Other researchers hypothesize that girls are more affected by social media usage because of how they use it. In a study conducted by the Pew Research Center in 2015, researchers discovered that while 78% of girls reported making a friend through social media, only 52% of boys could say the same. However, boys are not explicitly less affected by this statistic. They also found that 57% of boys claimed to make friends through video gaming, while this was only true for 13% of girls. Another Pew Research Center survey conducted in April 2015, reported that women are more likely to use Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram than men, which are visual-heavy sites. In counterpoint, men were more likely to utilize online forums, e-chat groups, and Reddit than women. Cyberbullying, an act of bullying using technology, is more common now than among millennials, the previous generation. It is more common among girls, 22% compared to 10% for boys. This results in young girls feeling more vulnerable to being excluded and undermined. According to a 2020 report by the British Board of Film Classification, many young people felt that the way they viewed their overall body image was more likely the result of the kinds of body images they saw on Instagram. Thank you for watching this video.